So, welcome to episode 2 of the real work of couples staying together. So, some of what I like to start out with when I'm working with couples is for them to understand and to look at the cycle that happens in their relationship, whether there's a very identifiable conflict cycle that they can tell me, this is what I do, this is what they do, this is what I do, this is what they do, and this is where it ends up. There's also sometimes a recovery time in a cycle or day or month of a relationship, or even like if you look through the fiscal year, like how the ebbs and flows of the relationship go. There's celebrations, there's holidays, there's summer vacation. So, what happens during all of those times? And are you as close as you want to be to your partner? And if you feel like you're always fighting this tension, whether it's like too much work or too much interference or chaos at home, or not enough closeness, or the relationship isn't prioritized, really take a look at what are some of the themes of the cycles that you're in. What are the fights about? What is the stress about? Is this solvable on your side? Sometimes there isn't a solvable fight, but there is a solvable cycle, how to break the pattern. And sometimes when we're in 24/7 relationships, we're in partially a trance most of the time, because you know how day to day goes, that we often are doing either the same thing every day or rushing the clock or having certain pickup times or drop off times or times that we have to be really occupied with work. So some of our life is really predictable, and it's hard to come back to your partner and have the energy to put into the relationship. So oftentimes they become a part of the trance cycle. Can you prioritize your relationship in the time that you're even listening to these videos, and take some notes about the cycle that you realize is going on in your relationship, the cycle that goes on with you, whether you feel too occupied to pay attention, too occupied to have energy towards your partner, too occupied to have energy towards yourself. A lot of times when people tell me intimacy is an issue in their relationship, I really look at how much time each individual is spending on themselves and in ways that they feel like they're taking care of themselves. They feel attractive. They feel like they have the space they need. They're happy and balanced in their life. Like all of this really adds to why and how we have things we have in our couple relationship that are the quality connections, the intimacy, the time needed to sort of hang out, work through things, and be able to address some of the things that are important, right? Life is busy and life is often fast paced. My other thought for couples is that sometimes we don't have a vision about what we're doing. We might be starting out a year and one person's trying to save money, the other person's not really thinking about that at all. So we're at cross purposes. So, making sure that you have time to have a series of conversations about the cycles in your relationship, from the conflict to the day to day to the things that you value to the things that you're prioritizing, to the amount of time you have for yourself, the amount of time you have for each other, and then all your other obligations and how to fit it in. It doesn't have to be that complicated, because sometimes it can be very predictable, and you can actually look forward to, oh, finally I have a day with my partner, finally I have time to myself. And these cycles of inserting health and balance into the relationship can have a big effect. So there's so many different kinds of therapies, right? And I just want to point out that a lot of the therapies have different ways of doing the same things, but just different ways of addressing or focusing on them. So a lot of times we look at, okay, what kind of couples therapy do I need? And what I've found, and I've studied a lot, is that they have similar theories, but they're based on something. They're just kind of hitting one direct part of a theory. Like, for example, emotional freedom technique, EFT. Well, this talks about attachment styles. It's a really good and important thing that you know about your attachment style, how close you like to be to your partner, how they attach to you. And often, if we look at our family of origin, we can kind of see the families we grew up in and whether and how our parents attach to each other and how we attach to them. And usually that's our style that we attach to other partners or people that are close in our life. And that doesn't mean we can't go towards a healthier attachment style, because we do a lot of our own psychological work, and as well as practicing, um, learning about how this technique affects our relationship and growing in our relationship, because we have a person who we can bounce off of these ideas. Like, we can work on our attachment style with them, especially if they trigger the insecurity of our style. Like, for example, the attachment styles basically generally are secure, insecure attachment, and avoidant. So let's say every time you get into conflict with your partner, they yell at you. And you're an insecurely attached person. You're very anxious. You're very aware of how your behavior might affect the outcome of the connection that you have with your partner. And you're a little hyper vigilant about what you're doing. Maybe sort of similar to what you were like as a little kid, where you were like noticing whether your caretakers were going to be there for you or not. And it made you a little anxious to know that they might not be, or they might be there for you in ways that made you feel criticized. So, for example, your partner yells at you, you're insecurely attached. And when you are feeling kind of provoked by that and also criticized by that, it's really hard for you to feel close to them. On the other hand, sometimes what happens if, let's say you were an avoidant style and the person was yelling at you, you would just completely withdraw. And then the person who's yelling at you, who's probably an anxious attachment style, would actually feel abandoned because of the withdrawal. So you really want to look at, like, what's the game that's getting played between you two, and to work on what's underneath the wound, what's on the underneath the conflict that has to do with your attachment wound. And when you get to work that through with somebody and have that real conversation, like, this is what it feels like when you do that, then you can actually start healing yourselves, because you're noting that you might be doing something that creates a response that actually makes things worse for you as well, and it provokes your attachment wound. So that's one of the styles to think about. And the reason why I'm bringing up the styles is I want to show you that there's an application of the work that you do with your partner that heals the things that happened in your life. And that's why relationships can be so healing, because we can come together and we can figure out how to heal some of the things about ourselves, um, that might inhibit us from getting more of the connection and the love that we want. And if we have an active participant in working on this, we can actually work through this, and they can work through their issues. And one of the things that imago therapy, by Hendricks, brought up was the idea of that we sort of marry our comfort zone. We marry, or we get close to people who are very similar to our caretakers. Sometimes both caretakers are in our partner. And he does an exercise where it talks about the positive and negative things in the relationships or the personality types that you saw of your parents. And you can kind of see that you pick sort of similar people to some of the attributes of your parents and some of the characteristics of your parents. And when you start becoming very aware of that, you might start choosing, I want to really pick people in my life that actually help me heal, not help, like, keep me triggered and my nervous system frayed, because that doesn't help me settle down and actually work on a love connection. It actually makes me feel like I have to um, figure out how to manipulate the situation, or um, sacrifice myself in a situation and not get my needs met, or just be detached so that it doesn't hurt me so much. So I really like people to know what their styles are, and there's always and the cycles that are and the patterns that are in the relationship, and there's always a way we can translate that into couple theory and some of the more important terms and communication skills that you might want to bring into your relationship to work better with the issues that you find are occurring, some of the cycles that are occurring and the patterns that have been ongoing in your relationship. So you can really conquer them. You can really see what's underneath them. You can demystify them. And that way, you can heal in your couple relationship. And that's why I want to go beyond just uh, talk therapy and go into more somatic work where you actually feel what's happening in your body. You're able to communicate with your partner your vulnerabilities instead of blaming them for why you feel pain. And that slowly but surely we're kind of working on how to change these patterns into healthier patterns and acknowledge and notice when the pattern's coming up and stop and pause and breathe and center ourselves so that we can have conversations that are productive and move us forward and help us figure out how to be very set and settled in our nervous system so we know how to approach and communicate any of our discomfort to our partner.